how far are you willing to go to acquire Greenland?
You'll find out.
If a consequence of your determination to take control of Greenland is the ultimate breakup of the NATO alliance, is that a price you're willing to pay?
You mean the breakup of it's very interesting question. So I think something's going to happen that's going to be very good for everybody. I think that we will work something out where NATO is going to be very happy and where we're going to be very happy. But we need it for security purposes. We need it for national security and even world security. It's very important. How about it?
You said you're hoping something's going to get worked out in Greenland, but Greenlanders have made it clear they don't want to be part of the U.S.
Well,
what gives the U.S. the right to take away that self-determination?
When I speak to them, I'm sure they'll be thrilled.
Mr. President, are you committed to keeping the U.S. in NATO?
I've had such a good relationship. I've made it so much better, so much stronger. It's so good now. NATO is so much stronger now. I don't agree with a lot of the things they've done, but that was done before I got there. I think NATO's been good. Sometimes it's overrated, sometimes it's not, but we have a strong NATO. NATO's, whether you like it or not, it's only as good as we are. If NATO doesn't have us, NATO is not very strong. The big fear I have with NATO is we spend tremendous amounts of money with NATO, and I know we'll come to their rescue, but I just really do question whether or not they'll come to ours. You know, I'm just asking. Just saying, right? You remember during the debate? Just saying.
Yeah, boy, we are back here on WLTH 1370 AM. That is 92.7 in FM dial, if you dare. Yes, it is Friday, January the 23rd, 2026. It is 7:04 in the PM. The future is here. The future is now. Yes, it is. Don't forget to come out tomorrow, 12 o'clock to 5 p.m. right across the street at the Gary Public Library for Speak Your Piece. Yes, it is a forum for everyone in the region to come and to figure out where did things go off of the rails here in Gary, and what can we do about it? Please come on out. I know it's going to be cold, but you'll feel warmer once you get to speak your piece. Yes, you will. All right, folks, that was our president, Donald John Trump, kind of exposing one of the things he does well is expose the hypocrisy in the status quo. And why I say that is NATO really should not exist, okay? NATO was supposed to exist because the Soviet Union had the Warsaw Pact in the 50s and the 60s. When the Soviet Union ceased to exist from 1991 on, there's literally no reason for NATO to be a thing that continues to exist. So why does it exist? It exists now basically to pick a geopolitical fight with Russia. You know, when the Soviet Union dissolved, there was a promise made by the United States and NATO that they would stop expanding, because one of the reasons that there was an issue is that Russia was always afraid of being attacked from the West and being encircled up there by NATO countries. The United States said, okay, fine, we won't expand anymore. But immediately started breaking that promise, you know, in the 90s under George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton. Plenty of people, plenty of journalists, academics, even our own diplomats and ambassadors like George Kennan, who used to be the ambassador to the Soviet Union, said that they were making a dire mistake by continuing to expand and antagonize Russia and push Russia, which has more nuclear warheads than any place in the world, including the United States, to do something crazy. And so now you have NATO, which basically acts as a vassal for the United States, does whatever the United States wants to do, and help the United States destroy Libya, a sovereign nation. The African country with the highest living standard, helped us destroy Afghanistan, helped us do a lot of stuff that was wrong. Now, all of a sudden, they respect sovereignty when it's Greenland. Oh, no, we respect Denmark's. They just let Donald Trump kidnap Venezuela's president. But now we all respect sovereignty because he might invade Greenland. You know, one thing Donald Trump has always done was expose the hypocrisy of many of people who complain about him the most. And, you know, it's unfortunate that this is how it had to be, but so be it. But before we went to break, we were talking about the first year of Donald Trump's presidency. It took me like 30 minutes to get through January, the stuff that he did in January, okay? So we're going to finish up with the rest of Donald Trump's first year of his second term in office. In July, J.D. Vance cast the tie-breaking vote to pass the One Big Beautiful Bill Act in the Senate. So many conservatives talk about how they want to shrink the deficit. This bill will do the exact opposite. It permanently extends the Trump tax cuts from 2017, which were set to expire at the end of last year. It actually raises the debt ceiling by $5 trillion while making significant cuts to Medicaid, to SNAP. It also expanded work requirements for SNAP. It included $150 billion in new defense spending and another $150 billion for for enforcement and deportations. ICE, it will actually increase funding to ICE from $10 billion to more than $100 billion by 2029, making it the single most funded law enforcement agency. ICE is more funded than most of the world's militaries. Still think this is about immigration and not mass surveillance? Just saying, folks. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that the law will increase the budget deficit by $3 trillion by 2034 and cause 11 million Americans to lose health insurance coverage. It was also in July where Trump would announce a 60-day ceasefire plan in Gaza. The Supreme Court would allow President Trump to lay off more than 1,300 employees at the Department of Education. Again, that's what he put Linda McMahon in power to do. Then, this is when we started to get the Epstein files creeping into our discourse because Trump actually directed Pam Bondi to release credible Epstein files. Because his own base, I'll give a lot of the MAGA people credit, they've been frying Trump over the Epstein files. That's the one thing. This is the one thing that a lot of them have turned on Trump about, and this is the Epstein files. And so Trump had to give them a little bit of something, but not nearly enough for a lot of his base to be satisfied. And so a lot of them are done with him now, or at least close to done with him. He made a deal with Coca-Cola to replace corn syrup with cane sugar. The House would approve a rescissions bill to cut $9 billion for PBS, NPR, and USAID. All the files related to the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. were declassified and released. And this is when he would announce his $200 million White House ballroom construction, which now is spiraled to over, I think, $300, $400 billion at this point. In August, he would fire the Bureau of Labor Statistics Commissioner Erica Tarfer, alleging that she politically interfered with employment report. Why? Well, she basically revealed that a lot of the Trump tax cuts and tariff policies had caused a lot of unemployment and was hurting the economy. And so Trump fired her for telling the truth about the unemployment numbers. This is August is when Apple actually started openly bribing Donald Trump with an additional $100 billion in U.S. investment. And they actually gifted Donald Trump a plaque with a 24-karat gold base in exchange for major tariff reliefs. Again, this is one of the main, this might be the biggest story of the Trump administration, the open bribery that this administration engages in. There's never been an administration that has been more open about being bribable than the Trump administration. Now, they all get bribed, but he's just extremely open about it. Trump would invoke Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act and deployed federal law enforcement agencies to Washington, D.C., alleging high rates of crime. If you listen to this show, you know that violent crime is at historic lows, and places like Washington, D.C. have much lower crime rates than they had 20, 30 years ago, not even close. But, and this is why I'm so adamant about pushing the data on all of you and the public, because when you walk around talking about how horrible crime is, that gives people like Donald Trump, that manufactures consent for Donald Trump to do what he did in Washington, D.C., which is have the troops in there harassing random black people. He would also fire Lisa Cook from the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, citing alleged mortgage fraud. Recently, I think a court basically said that he could not do that, or they're deliberating. It does not look like he will be able to do that, but she's another black woman in an important position, and she's it's a very symbolic firing for Donald Trump. But he tried, but I don't think he's going to succeed in being able to fire Lisa Cook. He would also announce the cancellation of Kamala Harris's Secret Service detail. Just so unbelievably petty. Incredibly petty. In September, after survivors of Jeffrey Epstein spoke on Capitol Hill and numerous politicians called for more transparency in the investigation, Trump called the scandal a Democrat hoax, which might be believable if there hadn't been a sexually suggestive birthday letter signed by Donald Trump to Jeffrey Epstein, released by the House Oversight Committee. The press secretary, Carolyn Levitt, who is like so incompetent at her job, couldn't even lie right, and said that it wasn't Trump's handwriting when anybody could see that it was absolutely Donald Trump's signature. Now, September is when Charlie Kirk would be assassinated, and Trump would announce that he would posthumously award Charlie Kirk the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and announce his intention. He also announced his intention of deploying the National Guard troops to Memphis, Tennessee. He would also deploy troops to Portland, Oregon, claiming the city was filled with domestic terrorists and describing it as war ravaged, which is nonsense. Portland is one of the safest cities in America, has been forever. Again, this is about Donald Trump manufacturing consent for fascist law enforcement crackdown on anybody who's against Trump. In October, the government shutdown happened. And at that point, we saw so many people who are on SNAP who were affected by the government shutdown and Social Security and all these other things. Also, the Supreme Court would rule that Lisa Cook would be allowed to stay in her position until legal arguments in January 2026. They're still deliberating currently. Again, I don't think he's going to be able to fire her. He wants to. He wants to very badly. She's a black woman who won't do exactly what he wants her to do, like Letitia James and Fannie Willis and people like that. But I don't believe the Supreme Court will allow him to do it. Even a Republican Supreme Court seems like they are not willing to allow him to do this. But hell, we'll see. We'll see coming up. While speaking on Fox News, Kristi Noem stated that Chicago was a war zone, again, manufacturing consent for fascist military law enforcement crackdown on the city of Chicago. But the state of Illinois and Chicago would sue the Trump administration over the National Guard being deployed to the city. In response, Trump would actually call for the jailing of Brandon Johnson and other Illinois officials for failing to protect ICE officers. this is when also when you would see the deal for the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas somewhat going into effect. Israel has continued to kill pretty much hundreds of Palestinians since the ceasefire happened, so I wouldn't call that much of a ceasefire. New York Attorney General Letitia James would be indicted in Virginia by President Trump's Justice Department. As again, she's a black woman who won't do what he wants her to do, so he would call for her to be prosecuted. Scott Bessent, who is the Treasury Secretary, announced the $20 billion bailout for Argentina, which included a currency swap, which was a direct slap in the face to American farmers, and a lot of them were livid about that. President Trump would announce another tariff, this time 100% tariff on Chinese goods beginning in November. About 700 employees would be reinstated at the Department of Health and Human Services after they were fired in error thanks to Elon Musk and Doge. Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, would issue new rules for press outlets and demanding that the outlets sign or turn in their press badges. Wow. After issuing the new press rules by Pete Hegseth, all press outlets, excluding One America News Network, which is a basically right-wing Trump-friendly outlet, they would all reject to agree to the new rules and all turned in their press badges. We had more No Kings protests in October against the Trump administration, over 2,600 of them this time. And in response, Trump would post an AI video of him in a fighter jet dropping fecal matter on the protesters. That's our president. In November, we're getting close to the end, folks. I swear. A DHS spokesperson would issue a statement attacking pop star Olivia Rodrigo after the singer objected to the use of her song in a social media post promoting self-deportation. This is when some of the private emails from Jeffrey Epstein would also come out in November, referencing Trump and his conduct with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. You can actually go back to that. I covered that pretty extensively on my YouTube page, Scott Cannon Radio. I covered what those emails were about. The government shutdown would end after Trump signed the new budget bill into law, marking the end of the longest shutdown in American history. The U.S. Mint would strike the last penny. Yeah, we stopped making pennies following a directive from President Trump. So this is why when you go to the store, they're not giving you pennies anymore. Like, I just went to the store the other day. They just gave me a nickel, and like I needed about 2 more cents. I was owed about 2 more cents. They just It would also be announced that the Department of Government Efficiency would be dissolved with 8 months remaining in its contract. I predict there are going to be a lot of lawsuits revolving around what happened during that period that Doge was in service, because they did a lot of damage to a lot of different entities within the government. Trump would designate Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his government allies as members of a foreign terrorist organization, with the exception of Delcy Rodriguez and her brother, who totally had nothing to do with Nicolas Maduro being kidnapped by our government. The Trump administration would also announce that they would no longer commemorate World AIDS Day. What did World AIDS Day do to anybody? And at the end of November, I didn't even know about this, he forced Northwestern University to pay $75 million to the United States government in a deal to end investigations and restore about $800 million in grants over allegations of not fighting anti-Semitism enough, meaning not censoring students and faculty who are critical of Israel enough. So again, Who does Trump really work for? Vladimir Putin or Benjamin Netanyahu? He works for Benjamin Netanyahu. And the media won't say this because, again, they all work for Benjamin Netanyahu and the Zionists as well. Donald Trump would also state on Truth Social that he was canceling all executive orders and anything else that was not directly signed by former President Joe Biden. He claimed that anything signed by an auto pen was illegal, although the Justice Department has said that it is legal. He would also pardon actual drug lord, Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez. Remember, they told you Venezuela was about drugs. That's what they told you. Venezuela was about drugs. Meanwhile, Trump literally pardoned an actual drug lord who was the president of Honduras. Again, the hypocrisy is the point, folks. These people know they're hypocrites. They don't care. Let's get to December. We're getting really close to the end, folks. I swear. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem would tweet that she was recommending a full travel ban on multiple unspecified countries and claimed that they were flooding our nation with killers, leeches, and junkies. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy would announce the removal of nearly 10,000 commercial truck drivers from U.S. roads over English fluency. The Trump administration will also launch the website for the Gold Card initiative that would allow foreign nationals to purchase legal status in the United States for $1 million. Trump would also sign an executive order that expedites the reclassification of cannabis from Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3 drug. That's actually kind of a good thing. People should not be getting locked up over marijuana. The board of the John F. Kennedy Center, which we established was basically Donald Trump and his sycophants, voted to change the name of the Trump Kennedy Center. Democratic board members alleged that they were actually muted and not allowed to voice opposition on the change. And here we go. Finally, in January, he would order airstrikes in Caracas and kidnap Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and the First Lady Celia Flores, which has just happened a few days ago. He also warned Colombia's President Gustavo Petro that he could do the same thing to him. The Trump administration would also announce the pause in federal child care and family assistance funds to 5 Democratic states: California, Colorado, Illinois, Minnesota, and New York. Of course, that was politically motivated. Kristi Noem would also announce the end of temporary protected status for Somali nationals. Again, we've gone over why they are so focused on Somalis and Somalians and Somalia, really. We covered that a few weeks ago. Scott Cannon Radio. Look up the segment about why they are so obsessed with Somalia. And President Trump would threaten using the Insurrection Act on Truth Social in response to ongoing protests in Minneapolis after ICE agents murdered, yeah, I said murdered, Renee Good. He would also, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth actually announced the integration of Elon Musk's AI chatbot Grok into Pentagon Network. So once again, Elon Musk is knee-deep in all of our systems. There would be nationwide protest on the 1-year mark on January 20th. And so, boy, good Lord. Good God. Man, the first year of Trump's second term has been a roller coaster through and through. I am absolutely exhausted after reading all of that and remembering some of it, not even knowing about some of it, not because there's so much stuff going on with the Trump administration at all times. They overwhelm you with crap, so you can't even fully digest it. So, ultimately, our goal is to try to figure out how to survive the next 3 years. And you can help us do that tomorrow. 220 West 5th Avenue, Gary Public Library for Speak. Please come out and speak or forever hold your peace, as I like to say. This was extremely heavy, and it's already 7:28, so you know what we got to get into. It's time for some happy happies. We'll be right back after these.